So which come space and equity are all about increasing assets and creating new space. Here today to talk about sort of the unspoken tension between Africans and African Americans. This is inspired by a conversation I had on my Uber in Houston on Thursday. So I'm in Houston for business and I take an Uber from hotel to the side of the business meeting. And my Uber driver was a Nigerian, about my age, maybe a few years older, had been here just for a year, just a little over a year. And we were talking about the differences of living in Houston, Texas versus, I think he lived in Edo, which is in the East, Igbo. One, he recognized immediately that not only was I Igbo, but that I was from Anambra State, which is where my mom's family is from, Obosi and Anambra. And I said, well, how'd you make that distinction off my name? He said, well, a lot of Igbos in Anambra named their children Obi. My father's from Delta State, which is also the East, not that close to Anambra, but relatively close. But I just found that interesting. But the conversation kind of went back and forth in that I am 43 years old. I've lived in the United States for 42 years. I lived a year and a half in Nigeria. When I was born, 6 months, and then my parents separated when I was 6. So I was 6 years old, I lived in Nigeria. When I was 6 months, 0 to 6 months, I lived in Nigeria. The rest of the time it's been here. So I was describing it like, hey, I can see it from both sides, if you will. Not like Acho, Emmanuel Acho, but I experienced life as an African American. You know, in the United States, black is black. Oftentimes we do this. Not much. There is distinction, but your experiences as African American. So I described that, but I also understood and have sensibilities of a Nigerian. My family's Nigerian, both sides of my family. I myself was born in Nigeria. So culturally, I identify as truly an African American or Nigerian American, but my experience is that of an African American. So the reason I bring the conversation up is he talked about cultural differences that he observed, and the focus of our conversation was on Black Americans. And there wasn't a lot of positive things said, and I was the counter. It's like, I've experienced different than what you're describing. So he mentioned that Americans in general, from his vantage point, from his 1 year, the morality was a loose, if non-existent term for Americans. I can't speak for him definitively because this was a 40-minute ride, but when he was referring to morality, based on the way the conversation went, it was a lack of respect, especially young people, for their elders. In Igbo culture, Nigerian culture in general, respect for your elders is paramount. This comes from realities that there's a lot of respect for our ancestral lines. And when you walk into a room, the youngest person in the room is going to identify and speak to all their elders in the room respectfully, ma'am, sir, in the language that you speak, it's non-negotiable. And he described frustration with kids entering the Uber, getting right to their phones, not speaking, tattoos, things of that nature. And he described a lot of the stereotypical things you hear about Black Americans, whether having babies out of wedlock. Do you need a business plan put together? Do you want to study an industry so you can purchase an existing business to add to your portfolio, to vertically integrate the business you already have? Or are you a corporate entrepreneur who wants additional streams of income that doesn't require all of your time and efforts, but the capital resources that you've gained? Well, we can help you do that. How do we do that? Well, with 20 years of banking experience, we can help on the financing side through the traditional bank, the non-traditional capital resources, and through equity. Reach out to us at 214-251-4786, 214-251-4786 for a consultation, or you can reach out at contactobi.com or our website, spaceequitycorp.com. We believe when you have the right team, you come correct and it can't stop you. Let us help you get there. Not having strong work ethic, being complacent, all these things it was almost like we're going through the list of stereotypes. But I didn't want to just dismiss what he had to say because this was what at least he was selling me off of observation driving an Uber. He's come to the country very recently, worked Amazon, is working, just hustling and there's good reason we'll talk to why he was here. So let me give some context to why he's here. We didn't talk about this, but context clues, if you will. So 2011, I traveled to Nigeria for a month. The purpose of that trip, I was 30 years old. The purpose of the trip was to go to my older cousin Obina's traditional wedding. Obina lives in Canada and Houston. His wife's in Houston. So he's between Canada and Houston. And when they were getting married, he was living in Canada and Houston. However, the traditional wedding was back in Obosi, Anambra State, which is southeast part of Nigeria. So, but when I get to Nigeria, I go to visit. I'm there for almost a month. I was a teacher at the time, so I had the summer off, or at least I had June and July off. So I'm there for nearly a month. First, I go to Lagos or Ikoyi. My uncle, my dad's younger brother, at the time was executive director of a bank in Nigeria, like Bank PHB. I think it was about 4 billion assets under management, size bank. So I'm staying with him in Ikoyi, Nigeria. My mom lives in Lekki at the time. She lived in Lekki. I think she still has that flat in Louis Sullivan. So she's in Lekki. The plan was we were going to drive from Ikoyi all the way to Anambra, which is tough roads, about an 8-hour drive. I have not acclimated to the time change. So I literally got in town. It was the evening that I got in town. I don't know what day of the week it was, but it was the evening. My uncle has a driver pick me up from the airport, bring him back to his house. We have a great dinner. And I mean, I'm living large. This time I'm a teacher. I am not flying. I'm a teacher and my wife was in residency. We ain't had no money. So I flew coach. I'm used to flying coach. I'd go back and forth to Columbus, Ohio, where I originally grew up. There used to be this sky bus. I'm trying to fly cheap flights. So all I knew was cheap flights. Get to my uncle's house and I have a driver for myself. I have somebody in the house that they're just going to make meals for me all the time. That's like their job while I'm on vacation there is to make my meals. Well, the next day, so I get in, let's call it Thursday. I get in Thursday night, have a nice dinner with my uncle, catch up, and I'm tired. I go to bed. The next morning, my uncle goes off to work. And my mom the plan was she was going to come to my uncle's compound, pick me up. When I say compound, meaning like this, it wasn't a huge estate. It was a very nice estate, but it wasn't like this huge thing. But a gate, you couldn't just come into his residence. There's somebody working the gate. That person had to get it. Well, the person assigned to be, for lack of a better term, my butler for the time was instructed by my uncle, let him sleep, let him wake up when he deems so. I did tell my uncle that, hey, my mom's coming to pick me up in the morning. Her driver will come by, pick me up, and we need to drive to, we're driving all the way to Obosi, which is Anambra State, 8-hour drive. And my uncle's like, he's hearing me, but he's like, we're having some wine. He's like, oh, that's a horrible drive. You sure you don't want to fly? I was like, nah, I'm not gonna, my mom wants me. He's like, I can get you a flight to Enugu. I'm not gonna be like that. I'll just ride with my mom. Well, what I didn't share with you guys is that my parents are divorced. This is my dad's younger brother. And he's never really he loves hard, and my mom's not his favorite person. So he instructed the folks, don't wake me up no matter what, even though it was known that I had to get there. Because really he wanted me to fly. He did not want me to take that drive, but I don't know why he didn't just tell me specifically. He probably did because my uncle's very direct, but I can't remember him saying that I don't want you to drive. I'll get you a plane ticket. Well, perhaps this was my uncle's plan. This was not my plan, but I don't wake up. I'm not a hard sleeper, but I guess the jet lag, I'm sleeping apparently the butler that was assigned to me was knocking really hard. My mom was there. And it's so much to the point where they called my uncle at work and he was like, if he's sleeping, let him sleep. I don't care that they're coming to pick him up. I know he needs to get to Anambra. I'll get him a plane ticket. So they don't wake me up. My mom gets frustrated. She was there she said literally her driver, because she wasn't there, but her driver came to pick me up. He was there for at least a half hour trying to get me because they had to get on the road. She tells him, hey, it's time to go. So they leave me. I wake up in a panic. What am I going to do? I'm supposed to be at my cousin's traditional wedding this evening. And so they get some stats. And what do I do? So the butler's not stressed at all. He's like, take your time, sir. Get dressed. We'll have breakfast down ready for you when you get. I was like, I gotta go. I gotta figure out how I can get to wherever my mom and them are on the road. And like this is 2011, so my cell phone is not working in Nigeria. I have a phone that my uncle gave me to use while I'm there, and my mom has blown up this phone. Like I don't, it's not my phone, so I don't know the number and stuff. And I don't reckon. I knew that I had like 12 missed calls, so I was like, it must be my mom. So she's blown up. She's left voicemails saying like she is very upset because she doesn't know the plan. Like her and my uncle don't talk. So all she knows is that I missed my ride. And she's very upset. She's not necessarily upset with me. She's frustrated with my uncle, to be honest, because like, so he wouldn't let the driver in. His people were instructed not to let the driver in. So, and she doesn't, it's not like they're communicating that he's like, I'm gonna get him a plane ticket. So she's like, you gotta figure out, call it this auntie, this uncle. Some people are leaving later. You gotta get to wherever they are and then ride with them. That is not my uncle's plan. My uncle's plan, and this story connects back to the Uber driver in Houston in 2024, but I'm gonna get there. My uncle's plan was, let me wake up, take a shower, breakfast, come. This driver was then instructed to take me to his office. I go to his office. His assistant gets on the internet, buys me a plane ticket from Lagos, I forget, Mohammed something airport to Enugu airport. Enugu is about a 2.5-hour drive to Anambra. So Enugu State is also the East Igbo. The Southeast is where the Igbos are traditionally from. My family's Igbo, both sides. So uncle is working, lives in Ikoyi. I go to his office. He's so relaxed and chill. I'm all like, he's like, relax, you're on vacation. You didn't, he's like, trust me. You didn't want to make that drive. It would have been miserable 8 hours. You're a bougie American. This would not be cool for you. Even though I'm the working class, if you will, in this scenario. I'm a teacher at the time. So I get to my uncle's office, get to hang, and now, even though this is 2011, when I left college and did not make the NFL, my first job was a banker for 5 years. So I had this connection with my uncle because of the same industry. At this time that I'm in Nigeria, I'm a teacher, but that's kind of actually this pivot is going to happen while I'm in Nigeria going back to the bank. But back to the story. So my uncle and I are kind of close because we're both bankers by trade. Uncle's like, hey, look, we're gonna get you a flight. When you get to Enugu, my security. So when I guess they had offices in Enugu too. So he had security detail in Enugu. A security driver not only was going to pick me up from the airport, drive me the 2.5 hours to Enugu. His job was then to stay with me the whole time I'm in the village in Anambra. Remember, uncle, my dad's side of the family, my dad and my mom are divorced. My uncle has never really forgiven my mom. So they're not friends, but they know each other. So they know that both sides of the people, they love me. So, and they're both gonna take. So my uncle's like, well, I'm gonna show this young man a good time and why he should come, eventually retire his American life and come live here and work with me. And I never took him up on the offer. I'm crazy. But anyhow, so my uncle's assistant books me a flight to Enugu. I leave his office. The butler takes me to the airport. I fly. I don't know. It wasn't even a 2-hour flight. I was shorter than that. I can't remember the airline. I think it's a regional airline called Eric, I believe. I fly into, and the reason this matters is because I'm the one who's late and I got to my mom's, the village before my mom did. So I get a flight. The flight, and my uncle gives me some pocket money. And I'm just living the life, having a great time. So we get a flight from Lagos to Enugu. In Enugu, I get in the car with somebody I don't know from Adam. And he's not talking. So he's like, this American people, and look, the security on the road all has M16s. That's a little bit intimidating. I don't speak Igbo well at any level. Maybe at the time, I can hear 25 to 30% of what people are saying. And everybody's speaking in Igbo. And my driver could speak English. He let me know he could speak English and speaks it fluently. English is the official language in Nigeria. But every time we get stopped, he's speaking in Igbo, and I don't hear. And there's this exchange. And typically there's a lot of like in Nigeria, you know, you go to the restroom, everybody wants a tip. But no tips are happening during this transaction. And this is straight mountain, beautiful mountain range, but I don't know where I'm at. My driver's not talking to me. I don't necessarily know how long the route is. This is 2011, so I don't know where we're like, we weren't on Google Maps tip. I had a smartphone, but whatever a smartphone was back then. And it's a bunch of Nigerian numbers I don't know. So I'm like thinking to myself, but I had the ability to call my wife. So my wife at the time is back in San Antonio, Texas. I call her and I say, hey, this is kind of weird. If this is the last, we had a good run. I love you. I'm about to lose signal and I don't know where we're going, but I do know every time we get stopped a lot and my guy's flashing this card and everybody has M16s. So I was like, if the kid dies, like, I'm not rich, but my uncle's rich. And maybe they're like, whatever, maybe I'm about to get kidnapped. And then that's what I'm thinking. Of course, thinking the worst. So comes to turn to find out, not only is my guy security, it's like secret police. So all the times that he was flashing his card and not paying the toll or the tip, it was just because he knew these guys and he was actually their superiors in some cases. And I was good to go. I was with top flight security. All right. So I tell this story. We get to Enugu. I get there like 3 hours before my mom does, even though I was way late because she drove and I flew. And then my security stays with me the whole time. Like his job was, my uncle was like, nope, I don't know what's going on in the village. You're staying with my nephew because I'm not going to tell my big brother, that something happened to his son because his mama didn't plan right and they're not together. Anyways, this is the whole thing. So I get my secret security while I'm there. The food is spectacular. Get to see family that I hadn't seen in some cases like all my life. In some cases, I hadn't seen for years. And then the other piece that was cool was being in Nigeria with family that I see all the time in North Carolina, in Texas, in Houston, was really, it was cool as hell. Like also just kind of know when your body, I don't know if this is scientific, but I feel like it must be. I just don't know the way to map it back to the truth. I believe that your body knows when you're home, where you're from. Like I was born in Nigeria and I felt like a frequency that I didn't experience, that I don't experience while I'm in the United States. I feel like my body was telling me like, this is home, right? Well, I had a great time. But the reason this is connected to the gentleman that was my Uber driver in Houston that was complaining about Black Americans is this. When I was in 2011, 13 years ago, the Naira to the dollar was 150 Naira, $1. Today, the Naira to the dollar is like 1,100, 1,149 to be precise to the dollar. Basically $1,000, 1,000 Naira is $1. That means in a 13-year gap, there's been inflation of 766%, or roughly 59% a year. That means that the value of your currency reduces by 59% per annum over a 13-year gap. That is very bad. And to the point where, like, I have a cousin that her husband, she was born in the U.S., grew up in the U.S., went to school here, but her kids grew up in Nigeria. They're now living in the States. Husband has a great job. She's a PhD by trade, but they're living in the States because I think part of it was that they wanted to kind of transition their kids to United States universities. So that time in life made sense. But I also think that the significant inflation played a role. It definitely played a role for why my Uber driver was here. He was like, hey, Nigerians have and have nots, and it's just, I need to present a better life for my kids. His kids are in that like 12 to 10 space where it was that time. So this gentleman is here, like I said, your currency reduces in value 59% over a 13-year period on a yearly basis.
Do you need a business plan put together? Do you want to study an industry so you can purchase an existing business to add to your portfolio to vertically integrate the business you already have? Or are you a corporate entrepreneur who wants additional streams of income that doesn't require all of your time and efforts, but the capital resources that you've gained? Well, we can help you do that. How do we do that? Well, with 20 years of banking experience, we can help on the financing side through the traditional bank, the non-traditional capital resources, and through equity. Reach out to us at 214-251-4786, 214-251-4786 for a consultation, or you can reach out at contactobi.com or our website, spaceequitycorp.com. We believe when you have the right team, you come correct and they can't stop you. Let us help you get there.
I mean, that's a lot of money just going. While the economy is growing, it's just crazy economic policies, unfortunately. Instability in markets. And then Nigeria is still the largest producer from a GDP standpoint in the continent of Africa. Nigeria and South Africa kind of go back, but most of the time it's more Nigeria than South Africa. Much greater population as well in Nigeria. So this guy's here for that. He is making the stereotypical place. Black people are lazy, but they're too comfortable. Now, the stereotypes have some foundation. I would say that his argument about the morality of people in American society was more towards Americans as a whole, but it was definitely focused on a respect or lack of respect for elders. That is huge in our culture. And from our short conversation, that's what I gathered. I did try to counterbalance his argument with, I said, hey, yes, I'm Nigerian. My experience with Nigerian, my wife's a doctor. So I have a lot of, and then I picked one of my African-American clients, one of my Black clients, developer by trade, his oldest daughter, or his son is an engineer. His oldest daughter, his second child, is in residency for anesthesiology. And then the baby girl is going to law school next year. Like, if that's not Nigerian, I don't know what is. But these are some of the stereotypes that are carried. They have some foundation. And I tried to share with him, I was like, hey, you've only been here for a year. The nuance is a lot more complex than what you're describing. Yes, kids wear tattoos. There's not as much drive as should be. There's some concerns in our community, but my argument was like, if we don't work together, the growth that's happening in the global South, we're going to talk about BRICS in a little bit, it's going to happen, and it's going to revitalize another set of colonialist practices if Black people on the planet don't work together. That's my argument. And I said, hey, I got this African-American family. He's just one example. I said, the majority of my clients in banking, I'm a commercial banker, and the type of transactions I do make it so that my clients are millionaires. It's not that that's like a big, that's not a brag, or that's just the reality. For them to be my clients, they have to be in that space. And 75% of my clients are Black. And right now, there used to be a mix where most of my Black clients were Nigerians. As I'm building my business at a relatively new bank for me, as far as time there, I would say of my clients, 75% are Black, 25% other. But of that 75%, they're all African Americans right now. I have some consulting clients that are Nigerian, but that's just where my mix is. And I said, these are people that are doing really well. They are Black too, so they're part of the Black narrative, and that doesn't always, and it's not about the talented 10th, W. Du Bois and versus everybody else, but there's more to the story about Black Americans than these stereotypes that he was describing. At the same time, he was still describing, according to him, what he saw. Now, was this 100% what he saw, or what he already knew, or was already told, or was already presented to in the media? It doesn't change the fact that this man drives an Uber, and the people that come into his vehicle are what he's describing as this immoral Americans, even though I had some concerns about some of the stuff he had to say about morality. There's definitely a level of complacency. There's comfort that exists within the United States with the resources that we have at our disposal that people in other parts of the world are just hungry, got to go get it. There's a level of, I wouldn't say necessarily lazy, but on the other side, the stereotypes that African Americans have of Africans is that sometimes we could be stuck up, think that we're better, specifically better than other African Americans, superficial, getting titles and stuff and degrees for the sake of that, but not having as much substance, and just in general, they don't respect who they are. Now, there's something about one's identity when you know it. There's confidence in how you move. But my daughter runs track. DeSoto is a relatively insulated suburb, black suburb of Dallas. Very, from a economic standpoint, the median income in DeSoto is higher than the average Dallas median income. Not higher than like Highland Park, but higher than from across the board, folks that live in DeSoto have a higher median income than folks that live in Dallas. You balance that out. So there is DeSoto High School from an athletic standpoint, from interscholastic as it pertains to band and other not extracurriculars. From a student population, DeSoto does really well. There's pride in the community. And you would one just saying that Black people don't have pride is an insufficient, it's a lie. It's not reality. But when people have identity, when there's ownership, it changes the dynamics of how they move. Well, Africans having familial ancestral ties where you know where you came from, where you own the land that you're on, it changes the way you move, the way you feel about yourself. And so much of that has been stripped from Black Americans. You can't tell the story about identity, about personhood, without telling that whole story of how we got to this place. It's like, what I also try to describe, and we didn't really get anywhere. I don't think I changed his mind. He definitely didn't change my mind. I felt like, one, I've been here for 42 years of my life. You've been here for one. But when somebody feels planted, there's pride in what they do. It's very challenging for African Americans to feel planted when you don't know, that at some point your enslaved ancestors came from Africa, but you may not necessarily know where. And then you can go back, 3-4 generations, and you can't go any further. That doesn't make one feel planted. When one is not planted, they're not secure. And when one is not secure, then what they do, say, breathe, and feel and believe is less than what they are. Period. But at the end of the day, my concern was, I was like, brother, you here to hustle and grind because of that 59% annual inflation or devaluing of your currency that's not sustainable. As the global South is growing, these BRIC nations, BRIC stands for, well, originally it was an economic conglomerate between Brazil, Russia, India, and China. It formed in 2009, added South Africa, I believe in 2010. Now countries like United Arab Emirates is in, Egypt is in, Ethiopia is in, Saudi Arabia is in, if I'm not mistaken. Nigeria is looking to join. That's kind of why I was bringing this up. Of course, Western powers do not want another economic competitor, if you will. So a country like Nigeria is probably getting a lot of pressure from the West not to join. But the truth of the matter, that's where these things go in waves and in cycles. And I would say over the next 100 years, growth is going to happen on the continent of Africa. Growth is not going to continue. And right now, the dollar is the global currency. Since World War II and beyond, the dollar has been the global currency. So even when the United States economically is not doing as well as it's done historically, because the dollar is the currency of trade, there's still economic power within that framework. And then other countries own assets in the United States. So it's not that a rising tide floats all boats, if you will. So the United States is doing well. A lot of times the rest of the world is doing well economically because there's so much economic through line that comes back to the United States. As you have an entity, an organization growing and thriving in the quote unquote global South and BRICS, and there's an attempt to create another currency of exchange or exchange in those countries' currencies, it takes away or diminishes the value or the need for the dollar. Is that going to happen anytime soon? No, but you're seeing a potential shift. And when that shift is happening, that's when the opportunity comes. The opportunity, one would argue, is that, hey, Blacks throughout the diaspora should work together to be in a more solid, planted economic position that we have been over the past several hundred years. And it doesn't happen when we're bickering amongst one another. That was my argument to the man, but we only had 40 minutes to talk while he was taking me to my destination. We didn't necessarily see eye to eye, but I found it interesting to tie back to all of this. Edo, where he's from, is not too far away from Anambra, where I was in 2011, when the Naira was $150, 150 Naira to the dollar. Now it's over 1,000. So now he's here. Now my cousin's family is here. But that Nigeria is joining BRICS. There's a lot of developments. Dangote, cement refinery is up and running. There's going to be growth. Technology is happening in Nigeria. It's pretty significant. 1 in every 5 Black people on the planet are from Nigeria. There's opportunity that has happened that no matter whether or not we participate or not, the growth opportunity is happening on the continent of Africa over the next 100 years. So much to the point where I am going to, now everybody's gonna pay their own way, as you guys know our financial story with the failure of our coffee shop. We're bouncing back, and we're gonna bounce back well. But in 2025, late March, spring break time, so perhaps we could bring my daughters, we're going to take a trip to South Africa. The goal is to have about 10 or so Black folks in a group, go to South Africa with a purpose. This is for people who love travel. This is for people who want to see the economic thriving of Blacks on the planet. And they want to be connected back to home. I mean, we're rooted or planted back home. There are 15 countries, or so South Africa is one of them, where if you are a United States passport holder, you can't just only be a citizen. Yes, you have to be, if you're a United States citizen who carries a passport, who has his or her passport, you can travel to South Africa without going through the visa process. That means with a passport, you can travel to South Africa as easily as you can travel to Disney. You probably could spend the same amount or less traveling to South Africa. You can travel to South Africa as easily as you can fly to the Caribbean, to fly to Jamaica, which is in the Caribbean islands. There's a lot of destinations that African Americans find themselves going to. There's places on the continent. You can go to the Gambia. While I was on that trip with my uncle in 2011, I spent a month. I went on a business trip with my uncle from Lagos, and we went to Accra. I don't think we spent that much time in Accra, but we spent 4 or 5 days in the Gambia. Beautiful place in West Africa. Gotta go there. You can go there without going through a visa process. You can go to Senegal, which is very close to the Gambia, without going through the visa process. Surprisingly, you now need to get a visa to go to Ghana, where there's so many African Americans traveling to Ghana, doing business now in Ghana. The year of return was 2019. But since then, you do need to have a visa to go to Ghana. You do need to have a visa to go to Nigeria. I think my ECOWAS passport is expired, so I need to go through that process to go back home. I can go to South Africa easier than I go to Nigeria right now. I do need to renew my Nigerian or my ECOWAS passport, so that's no longer an issue. I say all to say, be on the lookout for information to come. We're going to curate a trip for people who love travel, who may want to see business opportunities and potentially engage in business opportunities. We're not going there for business. The purpose of the trip is to enjoy. Now, for these are going to be a lot of entrepreneurs, so there'll be time to explore potential connections one can have on the business front. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring my aunt, who is very tied to, she runs my mom's business in Nigeria. She also has political connections. If my uncle is interested, the one that's a retired banker, he may join us as well. But we're going to spend some time on the continent enjoying ourselves. There'll be about 70% of the time will be kind of guided, curated activities. 30% of the time will be free for someone to explore on their own. But since this would probably be a lot of our guests first time on the continent, we want to make sure that we do it in an organized fashion so they truly enjoy themselves. Yes, you can go to South Africa without having a visa, have your unexpired passport, book your trip. We're going to put all that together. It is April 2024. So we're going to take a whole year to prepare for this trip, give people plenty of time to save up money to do so. At Space and Equity, we believe that increasing assets and creating new space is the way to guide yourself towards more economic freedom and independence. To do that, I am a commercial banker by trade, but I'm also an entrepreneur, specifically a consultant. If you have I've been in the financial industry for 20 years. If you have a project associated with anything from developing a site for your operations, we work with physician groups that are building surgical centers. We also are licensed in insurance, so we work on IULs, life insurance, interesting enough, is where the most liquidity on the planet is through insurance. And life insurance, more than 80% of what happens through life insurance has nothing to do with death benefits. It's usually a wealth transfer. And it's something that all of us have to have as we move around the world. So we're licensed in that space, can provide a financial analysis to our customers and see what's the best route for you. We just believe in independence, and being independent, one needs to be entrepreneurial at times. Thank you guys for this time. Love sharing the story. It's a 13-year-old story that kind of brings memories back to place. I hope that my Uber driver is not offended that he was the subject of my conversation if he ever sees this. I had a great time talking with him. I don't think that I convinced him of anything, but to my fellow Nigerian, my fellow hustler, I wish you the best. Hey, when you come correct, they can't stop you.